Dr. Hazarika, namaskar.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, namaskar.
How are you, sir?
Fine, fine. How are you?
I hope your department is doing well.
Yes,
Department of
yes.
Archaeology in Cotton University.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, yes, yes.
as per the time schedule now, we have to move. And next topic is building scientific temper amongst children by introducing ancient Indian monuments and rich artistic beauty. I would request to consultant Saab to introduce Dr. Manjil Hazarika for next session, please.
Hello.
Sorry, sir. Namaskar.
Hello, Manjil Hazarika. Welcome. I have seen you I have seen you quite young during these pandemic days. Now, dear Kisha participants, Dr. Sandeep Sharma ji, Saloni Madam ji, we are going to start our second session of the day. The subject is building scientific temper in children by introducing ancient Indian monuments and its rich artistic beauty and scientific magnificence. It's a wonderful subject, and in presence of Manjil Hazarika, I can't say anything on the subject because he is an expert on it. And you are very much lucky and privileged to have Dr. Manjil Hazarika. He is one of our most prolific experts, CCRT Regional Center, Guwahati. Of course, discovered by Dr. Sandeep Sharma here. I must appreciate Sandeep ji. Dr. Hazarika, he is an assistant professor and head of the Department of Archaeology, Cotton University in Guwahati, and convener of Kamrup chapter of Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, INTEC. After doing his master's, Manjil Hazarika, he went to the University of Lovira and worked there in a subject like Museum National and Museum. This is, of course, a very interesting subject, and he knows better. He will tell you about this, his achievement. Secondly, he is a PG diploma in heritage management and tourism also. Multifaceted talent. Hazarika completed PhD from Bern University of Switzerland, and he was awarded the highest accolade of summa cum laude, means the highest of honor, highest honor. Prior to this, coming to the teaching faculty, he was served in Indian Archaeological Society, New Delhi, for a long time. He has got so many publications, he did them. He has done a lot of research work. Even very recently, under his guidance and initiative, a museum has been set up in Assam near Guwahati. So he is Dr. Hazarika, and today you will listen from him and you will enrich yourself with his valuable lecture. Dr. Hazarika, I am telling you, Dr. Hazarika is attending this session from his residence. So there may be some network problem, but please bear with us. We'll solve it everything and we will proceed. Now I am handing over the, not handing over, just I am requesting Dr. Manjil Hazarika to address the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me share my screen. Okay, is it visible? The screen is visible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you to the authorities of CCRT, New Delhi, as well as Guwahati Regional Center, particularly the director of the CCRT, then the joint director of the CCRT, Dr. Sandeep Sharma ji. Then we have the consultant at our Guwahati Regional Office, Sri Pujari ji, all the members of CCRT authorities for inviting me to this particular session. And I have been in association with CCRT for a long period of time, in fact, some 4 or 5 years so far. And I'll be sharing with you some of my experiences of working in the field of heritage or Indian monuments or Indian archaeology, etc., and how actually we can enrich ourselves with this vast knowledge of Indian architecture or monumental legacy of our glorious past. So the topic that is assigned to me is the building scientific temper in children by introducing ancient Indian monuments and its rich artistic beauty and scientific magnificence. So on this outset, I would like to wish everyone a happy International Yoga Day. Today, the whole world is celebrating this particular Yoga Day on today, that is 21st of June. And in fact, if we talk about the history of this particular yoga or even the anything archaeological evidence of the origin of this yoga, so we can trace back to the Harappan period. So it has a long history for the Indian subcontinent. So I wish everyone a happy International Yoga Day. So you must have already received the abstract that I have prepared about this particular lecture. So the key issues that will be covered in this lecture is the origin and development of monumental as well as architectural tradition in India, then the scientific excellency of these monuments, then the role of different stakeholders like the teachers or the children or even the common public or the government organizations, non-government organizations for particularly preserving these monuments, then the importance of creating awareness among the children about these cultural heritage sites. So the learning outcome of this particular lecture would be, we will be able to understand the rich monumental and architectural tradition of India, the historical significance of these diverse ancient monuments, then the measures that we should be taking for creating awareness among our children, then we need to, how we can inculcate the sense of awareness, belongingness, and pride among ourselves as well as our children through this teaching learning process. So you must be well aware of this National Education Policy 2020. It gives emphasis on the rich tradition that we have in India. So the Indian knowledge system, how it has shaped our education, how we have gained from our traditional knowledge, etc., are actually emphasized on this National Education Policy 2020. So we had many world-class universities in the past, many educational institutes in the past, many learning centers in the past. These contributed for the foundation of Indian culture and philosophy to through our teaching learning process. I will not go into details of it, but at least I'd like to mention here that this National Education Policy 2020, it provides a framework how we should move ahead with for the promotion of Indian languages, arts, and culture through our through the inculcating about these important traditions from our childhood. So you see, there are many initiatives taken by the government now. Even at the education level, these things are being additional input or additional importance. So I would like to quote here one clause, that is 22.11. It says that we need to develop high quality programs and degrees regarding art, museum administration, archaeology, artifact conservation, graphic design, etc. These will enhance to contribute towards the conservation of Indian languages, art and culture, promoting them, preserving them. Then these can be utilized for the growth of tourism in the country. Finally, another important issue is that we have to create such programs right from school education, so that our children can slowly learn the basics of art, culture, and language right from their childhood and continue with their higher studies. So here, one specific suggestions from this National Education Policy 2020 is that the children would be given periodic exposure to activities outside the school through visits to places, monuments of historical, cultural, and touristic importance, meeting local artists, craftsmen, visit their educational institutes at district, tehsil, or village or state level. So you see, right from the education system, or the government of India, or even the state governments are now trying to give specific importance to this sector of art, culture, and heritage. Now, coming to this topic, this particular topic that we are emphasizing today is the ancient monuments, or in general, what does a monument mean? If you see the Cambridge Dictionary, monument would mean any structure or a building that was built to honor a special person or an event. It can be an important part of our history. It can be a large building, it can be a small building, it can be made of stone or any object. And finally, these monuments are to show some respect to a group of people or a special place for this purpose. The etymology of this particular word monument has come from Greek mnemosion or mnemosisnon. It means that to remind or to advise or to warn about our past or any specific event or a specific person. So normally we use this word called monumental to show something grand, to mean something extraordinary. So definitely this word monument itself is extraordinary for us. And in Indian context, we have this Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act 1958. It talks about this particular monuments or ancient monuments. It means any structure, either it was erected or a monument, or it can be a tumulus or a place of interment, or any cave, rock sculpture, inscription. It can be a monolith of historical, archaeological, and artistic interest, and it should be minimum 100 years old. You see, this particular act talks about what is an ancient monument and how these monuments should be preserved and protected for our future. That is also being discussed in this particular act. Monument is also a part of our heritage. What is basically heritage? Heritage is something that we would like to conserve or collect. It is something that we inherited from our past, continuing with the present, and to be continued or to be preserved for our future. So definitely these heritage, particularly monuments, also come under heritage. These heritage, if you talk about, these are either natural or cultural, and it has many segments within the cultural heritage, like tangible or intangible. So if you categorize the heritage in general, you have the natural heritage, then cultural. Within that, you have tangible, which can be actually feel or touch, and the intangible ones are the ones which we don't see, like the traditional skills, beliefs, traditions, music, drama, dance, etc. But the tangible heritage is the buildings or any historical place or any artifact or any monument. So definitely these monuments also are part of our heritage, which we have got from our forefathers, which are now present with us, and this should be preserved for posterity of our nation. So how to manage this heritage? So we have one special subject now coming up, which is known as heritage management. How do you manage our heritage, or how do you manage our ancient monuments? So under that, we have several stages how to do it. First of all, you have to identify those monuments, you have to interpret them, we have to conserve them, we have to plan them, we have to develop the site, and finally manage for the inviting people to feel and enjoy this particular monument. So this is a new concept coming up in cultural sector now, this heritage management, this subject now. It is basically an interdisciplinary subject, and it includes people from technology, it includes people from science, it includes people from art, culture, language, literature, etc. So everyone can contribute to the management of our heritage. So let us have a look on the rich monumental legacy in India that we had. So if you recall, or if you simply think about our past, we have a past which is prehistoric, the period of our past before we started writing, before our discovery of the written script. So that time, which is known as prehistory, we had our ancestors who were living a life of mobile lifeways. So they were basically roaming from here and there in search of food. They lived a hunting, gathering lifeways. So in that time period also, they were living in some areas. So those sites would have some remains of their activities. Of course, we cannot trace back their monument from that time, but at least whatever they used for their residential purpose, these are extremely important resources or sources for our understanding of how humbly our ancestors started building any activity area as well as a place of dwelling. From that, slowly people started making some kind of permanent structures right from the Neolithic period, and then now we have the grand monumental legacy. So basically we need to understand how in prehistory, during the prehistory, people were residing in those, occupying in those wild areas. These are some of the stone artifacts from the site of Pallavaram discovered by Robert Bruce Foote in 1863, and from Madras area and or Chennai. So this was the beginning of prehistory in India. That's why this geologist, British geologist Robert Bruce Foote, is known as the father of Indian prehistory. On the right hand side, you can see an excavated Acheulean surface, that is the Paleolithic, early Paleolithic time period, something like 1.2 million years old surface, where Professor K. Padaya, Padma Shri Professor K. Padaya of Deccan College, Pune, has excavated a floor where our ancestors at around 1.2 million years were residing. So the another important site again in southern part of India is the Attirampakkam. It is in Tamil Nadu. It is the earliest evidence of Acheulean man in India, dated to 1.5 million years, where Professor Shanti Pappu has excavated the site. And on the right hand side, you can see how the children from the nearby schools are brought to this particular site and then shown the important discoveries from this particular site. So as a teacher in school or in universities, in college, we should always encourage the students to bring to these excavated sites or the sites of historical and heritage nature, so that at least they can have a first-hand experience of our rich past. So I'll talk about how actually art started in Indian context. This is one of the early evidence of art in India from a site called Patni. It is an ostrich egg shell on which some form of engravings are there, which is from the site of Patni in Maharashtra, and it is an upper Paleolithic art that is the beginning of artistic creation in Indian context, you may say. So where these prehistoric people were living? So basically, apart from the river valleys, so these prehistoric people were also living in some rock shelters or caves spread across India. So on this left, you can see how different areas caves and rock shelters were occupied by our prehistoric people, and then major rock art sites which are spread all over India. And on the right hand side, you can see this particular site of Bhimbetka. It's a World Heritage Site, and Professor V.N. Mishra of Deccan College is shown here. He excavated this particular site. It is very near to Bhopal, and it has some of the very interesting paintings made by our ancestors. So these paintings are known to be right from Upper Paleolithic period, continuing with the Mesolithic, Neolithic, Chalcolithic, and even of historical period. So these dwelling areas were also utilized for not only for residential purposes, but also a place for expressing their artistic skills. So I'll move forward with the Mesolithic time, where our ancestors were shifting for their economy from a hunting gathering stage to the agricultural lifeways, in which people started living in some kind of round huts. This is an excavated site called Chopani Mando in Belan Valley in UP, where in the last phase of the Mesolithic period, you have some round huts, which you can see here. These are round shaped structures, the floors where our ancestors were living. So I'm taking you to another important site called Burjahom in Kashmir. In the Karewa deposits of Kashmir, you have some Neolithic sites where our ancestors, Neolithic population, was living in some kind of pits, dwelling pits. So these dwelling pits is another form of architecture, you can say, or monument, you can say now. This is a reconstruction of the Burjahom pit house, where from the surface you have to go down to the pit and then stay, because it is a very cold climate. So to avoid the cold, the Neolithic people of Burjahom in Kashmir, they were residing in dwelling pits. These are some of the megalithic structures from that site of Burjahom. These ones, and when one of the slabs found in the site of Burjahom, you have some paintings which have some hunting scene along with one moon and a sun. So this has so much of even artistic as well as scientific significance. If you are interested, you can go through the discussions on the astronomical issues related with this particular slab from Burjahom. Another important site called Hetapatti in UP has also produced some kind of hut floor, where you have the pottery and this round structure. This site of Budihal in Karnataka, it has also several huts floors. These huts floors were made or with some stone rampers, so that they can erect some kind of stupa structure out of bamboo or wood or any thatch. These are also some pit dwellings from the Chalcolithic site of Kauthe in Maharashtra. And you till today, in the rural Indian context, you will find some pit dwellings. These are similar to these what I'm showing you in the picture. These are some round structures. These are also a continuation of our prehistoric past. So these are some house plan from the site of Inamgaon of the Chalcolithic period. So these are some round as well as rectangular structures of the Chalcolithic period. These are also continuing till today in rural Indian context. This show how our tradition persisted for a long period of time, some 4,000 or 5,000 years old tradition of our vernacular architecture as well as monuments. So even at the site of Lahura Deva in Uttar Pradesh, you have some bins, earthen bins or pits which were actually dug to store grains, rice or wheat grains were even stored in those pits. Now let us move to one step ahead, that is the Indus Valley civilization, or popularly known as the Harappan civilization, or even the Hindu Saraswati civilization, etc. These are the terminologies that we use nowadays. And here you can see an artistic recreation of the city of Harappa. It shows how structured the society was, how they established their towns. There were very well structured architectural remains there. The bricks were very standardized, like 1:2:4 ratio. That means 10 centimeter, 20 centimeter, and 40 centimeter ratios. Bricks were used, and you can see the upper town or the lower town, and the whole of the sides were crisscrossed with parallel sized houses or buildings, you can say. This is the area of the Harappan civilization. This Harappan civilization is one of the largest civilization of this world, spread across a large area. In Indian context, you have this Gujarat, Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab, Maharashtra, and even UP. Then you have entire Pakistan, Afghanistan, up to Balochistan area. You have this Harappan civilization which was spreading. And there are some marvelous architectural remains now, or monuments now we have from this time period, particularly from sites like Lothal, where you have a dockyard or a warehouse where ships used to transport goods, and also import export of objects was prevalent during this time. And you can see this site of Lothal and the imagination of the site of Lothal, or an artistic expression of this site of Lothal, where you can see these seas, these ship or boats are coming into, and then they are storing the goods in those warehouses. This is an artistic expression, and these are some of the wonders of our legacy of our past. This is another site called Kalibangan in Rajasthan, and where you can see some even fire altars and even very well established houses and well established drains, even some of the fire altars, etc. So these show how rich tradition we had even in the past. This site of Dholabira is another important site which show how the river was, the water was actually utilized through the site of through their settlement. This Dholabira site, you can see here, these are some structures like and in between we have these roads like the modern day, and you have this crisscross pattern of. So I'm moving ahead. So you see on this right hand side, you can see the steps which till today we use for entering to our houses and all. So these are some structures which are very well planned, with well structures and with acute measurements and all. So this show how actually we crossed a time for the later period, or how slowly our architecture was developing, how the monuments, ancient monuments were, building activities were progressing in the past. We mostly we are aware about this great part or the granaries of Mohenjo-daro, or even well planned drainage systems of the Harappan civilization. So these show how technologically artistically or even scientifically, the Harappan people were excellent. So this is another site of Gilund, where you can see some kind of parallel walls which are considered to be some kind of granary structure. Anyway, now let us move to another important segment of our past, which is the Iron Age or the megalithic tradition, which are associated right from the Neolithic time, even in Chalcolithic, or even with the Iron Age period. We have this tremendous variety of megalithic monuments. Mega means big and lithic means stone. So these are structures which are made with large stones, either monolithic, that means a single stone, or several stones were made to shape these particular structures. These are again found in all over India, and these are of various shape and size. You can see some of the dolmens, some of the menhirs, some of the dolmenoid chist. I cannot go into the details of this classification because we have very limited time, but I'll try to summarize here that most of these structures were either burial structures or some commemorative structures. So there are some anthropomorphic megalithic structures which are basically in the shape of a person, or anthropic. Morphology is of anthropic, you can say, and these are basically found again in mostly in southern part of India. And another important rock cut or megalithic structure found in Kerala is this kind of chamber made directly on the rock outcrop, and the shape is actually, or the shape is given by removing the excess amount of stone by carving into it with some chisel or some iron or any other metal tools. This is another top stone that is found in Kerala. This is another beautiful kind of megalithic structure from southern part of India. So as I was telling you, the megalithic structures which were basically used for burying the dead, and in the Iron Age, so many of these structures are found when a person dies, along with some grave goods, the person is buried, and some stones are kept along with that or above that, just to protect the site burial, as well as to commemorate the burial. So these are some of the rich tradition that we have, and you can see some excavated remains of these burials from southern part of India. So these are some of the chambers of the burials. So in Northeast Indian context, particularly in Meghalaya or even Manipur, Nagaland, Assam, Mizoram, we have some very good sites having megalithic structures, and it is important for us to remember this tradition of erecting megalith is still living tradition among many of the communities in Assam and Meghalaya and other parts of Northeast India. So this is an unique thing that even till today, this tradition of erecting this megalithic structure is continuing. This is a structure which was actually erected in 2010, just 10 years back, in the Khanapara area of Guwahati. This is another very important site called Nortiang. You can see the dolmens as well as the menhirs in this beautiful site, a huge site with hundreds of dolmens and hundreds of these menhirs or alignments. Another unique feature of Northeast Indian megalithic culture or megalithic tradition is the tradition of hollow monoliths. These monoliths are actually some structures which are like a barrel shape, you can see, and there is some hollow inside, and these are similar to the ones found in Southeast Asia. So you see, So much of cultural interaction we can see actually all over South and Southeast Asia in the past. These are some of the decorated megaliths or monoliths from Mizoram, where you can see some of the persons or some animals or some plants are being engraved in these particular megalithic structures. This is another site called Dimapur. These are some of the monolithic pillars found at the at Nagaland, which are also unique features of the megalithic tradition in Assam, Northeast Indian context. Now let me share it another unique example that we have in Assam. This is a particular site called Silsang or Hilsang. Sil or hill means stone, or sang means it's a bed, or it's a kind of place or frame, you can say. So this particular site is unique because till today this site is being used as traditional Raj Sabha, where the traditional king of Khola kingdom of the Tiwa community of Assam use for their a ceremony. It's a Gohai Urwa Furwa it's the name of the ceremony, where the king, the traditional king, comes there and sit on this particular dolmens along with his all the dignitaries. So this is a very unique feature. I don't think anywhere else in this world you will find this tradition of practice of using these kind of dolmens for traditional Raj Sabha. So these are some of the dignitaries of the traditional Khola kingdom of the Tiwa community, which used to sit on this particular day, 8th day of the month of Boisak or Bohag in Assamese calendar. So the people, the villager, they also used to offer respect to the king, the traditional king. And we have written on this particular tradition. You can actually see this particular article if you are interested in this journal called Journal of Indo-Pacific Archaeology, published last year. If you are interested, you can actually have a look on it. So now let us move ahead with another unique feature of Indian monumental legacy, that is the stupas. These stupas evolved from some simple prehistoric burial heap or tumulus under which the ashes of a body, of the deceased body, used to be buried. The word stupa has come from the Pali thupa, which means a heap of mud containing funerary relics of Buddha or his disciples. In the Hinayana phase of Buddhism, you have the stupa, which symbolizes even the Bodhi tree, and even after the Buddha's death, his relics were divided into several parts and they were buried under the mud stupas. So there are many stupas which are earthen. There are many stupas which are with bricks or some stones. You can see in detail. I'll show you some of them. And even there are some stupas which are of votive in nature. The Buddhist stupas, it can be grouped into several categories. The Saririka group of categories, you can say. These consist of the corporeal relics of Buddha and his disciples or Buddhist teacher and monks. The other ones are Paribhogika. That means these are objects believed to have been used by Buddha, begging bowl or etc. Then Uddesika, the memorial ones, and the votive stupas. So these are some of the stupas, that the divisions of stupas that you can see. So you can see here the evolution of the stupa architecture. The initial muds or the funerary ones with surrounded by some stones, then the initial structures, then the sanchi, Then the very decorated one with depictions of Buddha in it. Then the later on the pagodas and all. So you can see the stupas has itself also has a history of its development. The famous ones are the like the Sanchi or Dhamek or all these structures. If you see, or the Amaravati, it has very beautifully ornamented, as well as it not only represent the Buddhist tradition, but also it shows the artistic skills of that particular time. There are many sites, many Buddhist stupas which are also with these toranas, which are also significant in terms of the stories attached to this Buddhism. So many of these Buddhist stupas as well as the toranas are also the repositories of the Buddhist tradition and reflected through it the artistic skills. So one has to actually appreciate this rich tradition of establishment of Buddhist stupas in the past in Indian context, which has also gone one step beyond our locality, that means India. So it has gone beyond our own country. It has gone to Southeast Asia or East Asia, even up to Far East like Japan and Korea, etc. So you can see how India has also contributed to the cultural, artistic, and technological as well as monumental legacy of our neighboring regions. These are some of the stupas and the Buddhist monasteries and Sanchi, an artistic expression here. And you can see how right from the 3rd century AD onwards, you have this beautiful depiction of the rich tradition of stupa building at the sites like Amravati, etc. So these are various kind of stupas that you can see here, or from India, Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, Tibet, Nepal, Burma, etc., or even in SWAT areas. So you can see how a variety of or diverse kind of stupa architecture was prevalent in the past, as well as how it has become important monumental legacy for India. The stupa at Sanchi. Now let us move to another important segment of our past or monumental legacy or architectural heritage of our past, that is the rock cut architectural heritage. What is rock cut basically? The rock which is not part of the structure can be actually removed by using some kind of metal objects, and to give a shape to a particular temple or a stupa or even any structure, they will remove the excess amount of the rock from the big boulder, and finally the shape is given by cutting or carving out the rock. So that's why it is known as the rock cut architecture, you can say. So basically it has several stages. Right from 3rd century BC onwards, we have the beginning of this rock cut architectural tradition. It has continued for several centuries up to 10th 11th centuries. So one of the earliest examples of these rock cut tradition in Indian context is from Bihar. The two important sites, caves like Lomas Rishi cave and Sudama cave, it's in the Barabar hill in Bihar. And in this Lomas Rishi cave, you can say one of the earliest rock cut caves, you can see the granitic hill is actually carved out to give this particular shape. And this cave was actually dedicated by the Mauryan emperor Ashoka in 261 BC, and it consists of a circular vaulted chamber with a rectangular mandapa. It is made of granite and it has the famous Mauryan polish. What is the Mauryan polish? In the Mauryan period, this granite or even the sandstone was polished in such a way, and it's like a mirror. It will give you a mirror impression or a mirror kind of image on the wall. It is so well polished. All the structures or even the buildings or even the pillars or even the sculptures are also given this Mauryan polish. It's a very famous thing. Even something like 2000 years before or 2200 years before, India could achieve such an excellence in the architectural tradition by applying this particular polish. So these rock cut monuments are also found all over India, and you can see that right from Maharashtra, then you have Tamil Nadu, then even Karnataka, you have the Orissa, you have Bihar, even some in Maharashtra. Then you have in Madhya Pradesh, and even some in Assam. We have a very rich rock cut monumental legacy. This is the famous Ajanta cave, which is one of the great art treasure of India. It contains some of the important sculptures as well as paintings. So this is another famous thing that should be remembered is the beginning of the mural paintings. So we have this rock painting in Bhimbetka that I have shown you there. So that was made directly on the rock surface without preparing the surface. But in the mural, so the rock surface is prepared and then the painting is made. That is the mural painting. So these are excellently depicted in the sites of Ajanta or the caves of Ajanta. It's in Aurangabad district. So you can see this how these caves were excavated or cut down in this particular fashion, and all these numbers of the caves are also given in there. You can see that the ceiling as well as the walls are also painted with some of the Jataka stories. These paintings include some of the Jataka stories, which are also some of the rich source of history, our painting tradition in Indian context. I'll not go into details of it, but we can see here, apart from the painting, you have some sculptures of Buddha and his disciples, as well as some of the stories attached to Buddha are also depicted through this sculptural as well as painting tradition. Some of the stupas, votive stupas. Let us move to the Orissa. In Orissa also there are some important sites like Udayagiri and Khandagiri caves, which are some of the earliest caves dedicated to the Jaina religion. So it has Udayagiri has some 18 caves of excavated by King Kharavela, and it has in the Khandagiri we have some 15 caves of later period. Anyway, this is another important site or another important area for India's rich monumental legacy. Udayagiri caves of Madhya Pradesh, another important site where you have this famous sculpture of Varaha avatar of Vishnu, made on the rock surface. That is the rock cut sculpture, one of the largest that you can see of the Varaha. Same site. Now let us move to site of Sri Surya Pahar in Assam. in the district of Goalpara, something 100 kilometer, you can say, from Guwahati city, and it is known as the Ellora of Northeast India because the Sri Surya Pahar has three important religious sects in it: the Hinduism, the Buddhism, and even Jainism. The sculptures of three different religion or religious beliefs are found in this particular site. That's why it is known as the Ellora of Northeast India or Assam. You can see it in this map taken from Archaeological Survey of India. This area is famous for the Jaina relics. These are areas for the Buddhism, and these areas are even this in one, and this is rich for the Hindu sculptures. This rock cut votive stupas of Surya Pahar are the evidence that the development of Buddhism in ancient Pragjyotishpura or ancient Kamarupa. These are some of the photographs of the votive stupas, and you have some Hindu icons, rock cut icons, and these are some of the Jaina vestiges from the site of Sri Surya Pahar. You have some images of Tirthankara, and the basically made on the coarse grained granite. Now I'll give you some examples of southern part of India, some of the rock cut tradition of Aihole and Badami, which are of early Chalukyan period. You can see these important sites like Dalpadi cave, where you have these Nataraja images, Badami, where you have these important again Nataraja images. The sculptors, they were basically paying specific emphasis on the pillars, which were basically used for many sculptural tradition, or making some sculptures as well as depicting some of the stories, narrative stories and all. Again, some of the pillars of Badami. This Shiva of Nataraja of the cave number 1, you can say. So this is something very unique form of Shiva, having the Tandava dancing form, you can say. So these are actually, these show the richness of the area as well as the diversity of Indian architectural tradition. The Trivikrama form, which is again present in Badami, the Harihara image. Another image that I would like to show from Assam, which is very unique again, the Bhogasana Murti of Vishnu, which is now in a tilted position. Why? Because that it is close to the river Brahmaputra in northern part of Guwahati at the site of Manikarneswar. Manikarneswar is in Rajaduar area. The whole sculpture was made on a granitic boulder, and because of earthquake, it has tilted. We don't know when it tilted, but now it is in the same posture here. And this particular image is very unique because it is having the depictions of Brahma with his lotus paddle, and all the 4 attributes like Sankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma, all are uniquely depicted in this particular sculpture of Vishnu. And most of the time, this boulder having the sculpture is either under water of the Brahmaputra or under the soil because of the over flooding and all. So you see, even naturally, many of the sculptures are actually under threat. We'll talk about this threat later on, but I just wanted to show you how the cracks are developing and what measures we should take. Because of these natural calamities or even the natural disasters or even natural factors, many of the sculptures are getting deteriorated. These cracks you can see on this particular sculpture. this daily life or even the common man's life. It is not only the religious or our belief system is depicted on the temple walls or even the chaityagrahas or even the stupas, etc. But also the daily life is also, or the common man's life is also depicted in the monuments or the architectural remains. So here are two photographs that I would like to show you here. One is the labor or a lady giving birth to a child is depicted in a Chola temple, and the other one is in a temple in Pragjotishpura. So these are some of the unique things that one has to keep in mind while studying the ancient monuments. Another important monument that we have in Assam, that is the Do Parbatia. It's in Tezpur in the northern bank of Brahmaputra. It is a door frame of a temple which resemble the temples of Gupta period in northern India. So this is one of the masterpieces of door lintel that is having the depiction of Ganga and Yamuna on both the sides. The famous site of Kamakhya temple complex, it is very well known, and it is also one of the monumental legacy of ancient Pragjotishpura Kamarapa. On the temple walls of Kamakhya, you have many deities which are depicted, and thus you can see the artistic skills while making these sculptures. Another important site from Northeast India that I'd like to mention here is the Unakoti rock cut sculpture in Tripura. These are actually huge rock cliffs which are basically used for giving this shape. These are another unique example of rock cut tradition. Something like 15-20 meter height sculptures are found in this particular site of Unakoti. This Mamallapuram, that is in Tamil Nadu, the Pancharathas, these are very famous actually sculptural tradition. Again, the Ratha system, like the Dharmaraja Ratha or the Bhima Ratha, etc. So these show how our ancient tradition, our belief system is also incorporated in the monumental legacy or while making the buildings or as well as the architecture. In the Undavali rock cut cave in Andhra Pradesh, another rock cut cave, you can see beautiful Ganesha images, and you have one very interesting image which is of Narada. Narada is another important person in our mythology or in our tradition. So he is also depicted, and recently we have published one paper on the iconography, actually how the icon of Narada is depicted in the sculpture. So that was published in a journal called Ancient Asia. If you are interested, you can just Google it and then read about the iconography of Narada and how he is actually the iconography is also diverse in different areas of India. These are some of the sculptures. First one is the Narada image from Undavali cave in Andhra Pradesh. Both are actually from Andhra Pradesh. And here you have another image again of Narada, and you can see this very interesting image of Narada here. This is from the Ghaneshyam house of Shivsagar, or even it is known as Ghaneshyam Daul. This Ghaneshyam was a sculptor or a person who was actually responsible for making the buildings in the during the Ahom period, during the reign of Rudra Simha. So this particular person who was Ghaneshyam, his residence is now another important monument of Assam, and it has some sculpture, terracotta sculpture or stone sculpture. You can see on the right, this image is actually shown in a very different way. How he is shown? He is shown in a dheki, the rice husker, you can say. So only in Eastern Indian context, only in Bengal and in Assam, we have these myths or legends attached to a person of Narada. Narada, his Vahana is actually dheki, and he is holding this instrument, string instrument, and he, from one place to another, he moves on a dheki. This is a very unique thing that you won't see in other place than Assam and Bengal. So even the regional variety or regional diversity in sculpture as well as artistic expression are also noticed in Indian monuments. These are some of the depictions of Narada in the temples of late medieval temples of Bengal, and here below is the temple of Ghanesham Dol in Assam. You can just see an example. This Ghanesham house in Shivsagar, again, it depicts even the lady or a person who is actually back. A common thing to see in the rural part of Northeast India. So many of the ethnic communities are frequently seen carrying a particular kind of basket and moving from one place to another. This is another important thing to notice in these ancient monuments. So let us move to the last temple in Ellora. The temple is entirely made on a big rock outcrop. This is one of the largest monolithic temple. The stone itself is carved out to make this particular temple. This is in Ellora, Kailasa temple. You can see the beauty of this grand temple from the top view here, and the base you have these narrative panels of Ramayana and Mahabharata. The stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata are actually also depicted through these narrative panels. So another important site that we have in Karnataka, so where you have this Gomateswara statue, which was built in the 10th century by the Western Ganga dynasty. This is the famous sculpture also known as Bahubali. It is the tallest monolithic statue of the world. So you have this largest monolithic statue of Gomateswara or the Bahubali. This is of the Jain religious belief. This is another wonder of our rich monumental legacy. The Brihadeswara temple in Tanjavur, it's an 11th century temple. It testifies the brilliance, achievement of the Chola period in architecture, sculpture, painting, and bronze casting. We have this Hoysala architecture in which you have many important temples, particularly spread across Karnataka, like Chanakeswara temple in Belur, Hoysaleswar temple in Halebidu in Karnataka again, Chennakesava temple in Somnathpura. You have again in southern part, you have this famous site of Hampi of the Vijayanagara Empire. So you see, I'm showing you some of the rich or important sites, and most of the teachers who are present here, I believe they are from different parts of India. So you can actually realize the richness or the diversity of our monumental legacy. And at the same time, where different dynasties or different rulers, different kingdoms emphasized on these monumental architecture. And these are actually the legacy of our past, which have become our heritage. So there is again diversity in temple architectural tradition like the Nagara tradition in the northern part and the Dravida tradition in the southern part. Then even there are some kind of regional varieties like Vesara or Bhumija or even Odishan temple traditions. So there is so much of engineering skill or so much of calculation, so much of mathematics in it. So a student of engineering or a mathematics or even sculpture or architecture has got so much to learn from these ancient monuments. These are the Dravida style of architecture, particularly the site of the Meenakshi temple in Madurai, the Gopuras of Brihadeswara temple in Tanjavur, the Shikharas or the Vimanas or Brihadeswara temple, the chariots or Hampi. So you see, so much of uniqueness is there in the architectural tradition. So apart from this, you have many tombs of the kings, early medieval or even the late medieval period. There are many tombs of important dynasties or even some kings and queens and all. So these are also important part of our monumental legacy. The monuments which are of the Delhi Sultanates, the Mughal architecture, we are not going into the details of it, but you can very well imagine how these have become part and parcel of our lifeways now. About Taj Mahal or Fatehpur Sikri or even Red Fort or even the Agra Fort, etc. Humayun Tomb, how it has become our part and parcel of our architectural tradition or even our for our tourism industry, etc. So you have another important segment of our architectural legacy that are the forts. These forts are again found all over the India, and particularly in the western part of India, in Rajasthan, you have many forts which are unique, and these are some of the examples like Ajmer Fort, Amir Fort in Jaipur, Chittar Fort in Chittorgarh, Kumbhalgarh, Ranthambore Fort, Jaisalmer Fort, etc. So you can see a variety of again secular architecture in it. Apart from the religious architecture, you have many secular form of architecture in it. And I'm showing you here some of the monuments which are part of the Ahom dynasty in Assam, known as the Ronghor, or the amusement building, you can say, or this is the palace Karanghor, and this is the famous Shiva temple in the Shivsagar town. So these are some of the monuments built by the Ahom dynasty or in the medieval period of Assam. So apart from this, in Assam, another important monument that we have are the burial grounds known as the Moidams. So these are burial grounds which were used for burying the dead, particularly the royals as well as important personalities of the Ahom kingdom. So these Saraida Moidam, it has the highest concentration of this large vault burials. These are now in the tentative list of World Heritage Sites from Indian context. Then we have again the colonial architecture again spread across the in India, in different parts of India. So these are also part of our rich monumental legacy. So here in the past 30 to 40 minutes, I have tried to give you a background of the rich monumental tradition in Indian context, right from prehistoric, proto-historic, historical phases, focusing ancient, medieval, and modern period. So you see, it is very difficult to compile things in a short period of time, but this last 30 to 40 minutes, I wanted to give you an overview of the rich tradition of monumental history. So now most of these monuments that I have shown you here are now part of the World Heritage List. This World Heritage List or World Heritage Sites are actually listed by UNESCO, and we have something like 38 World Heritage Sites from India, and they are from various parts of India, and these World Heritage are actually signify the uniqueness of these monuments as heritage of the overall world. It is not only of the Indian heritage, but it is considered as world heritage. It is important or unique for even in the context of the whole world. So this UNESCO, it has used this particular convention for protection of world cultural and natural heritage, including our natural heritage. Basically what it does, it identifies or defines these unique structures, then it enlists these unique sites from the member countries, then it suggests some protection measures for protecting or conserving these monuments. It promotes cooperation between different nations, and finally these are considered as universal treasure. These should be preserved for our future generation. That's why the UNESCO takes special interest in conserving these World Heritage Monuments. There are many organizations like ICOMOS, International Council of Monuments and Sites, IUCN, International Union of Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, then ICROM, International Center for the Study of Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property. These are actively engaged in World Heritage preservation. So how do we select a particular site for the UNESCO World Heritage List? So that's particular site has to have outstanding universal value, OUV. Outstanding universal value is the term which is basically refers that outstanding means exceptional or remarkable places on earth. Universal means it should be of global perspective, and the value, how do you measure the value? Based on the universality and also the exceptional value of it. So based on the outstanding nature or the excellence in the monument and the universality of it, we judge or value this particular monument. It becomes the outstanding universal value for us. So there are many criteria which are being used for the selection. So we don't have to go into details now, but there is a committee, World Heritage Committee, for the implementation of this World Heritage Convention, which discusses or enlists these World Heritage sites. There are many sites which are in tentative list, and many of the sites are now being developed by the state parties, like the countries or the government organizations. Like in Indian context, you have this Archaeological Survey of India, or the state departments of archaeology, or the local NGOs, local governments, etc. All used to take part in formulating the dossier for nominating these sites in the World Heritage List. Initially, it has to go to the tentative list, and the tentative list, among the tentative list, the World Heritage Committee used to choose some sites for the final list. So in this sector of World Heritage management, you can say World Heritage Convention, there are many roles that we need to play. there are government organizations like Archaeological Survey of India, which is the organization or the custodian of India's architectural or archaeological monumental history. So these sites are actually protected and conserved by this government organization under the Ministry of Culture. This ASI or Archaeological Survey of India has set up several missions for like National Mission for Monuments and Antiquities, National Monuments Authority, National Culture Fund, National Mission for Manuscript, etc., for conserving our rich heritage. So, as a teacher, we need to inculcate our students so that they take in these particular organizations for appearing in their exams in the future. So once they think of becoming an archaeologist, let's say, once they think of becoming an architect, once they think of becoming a conservator, so they can actually inculcate that study in their studies, and finally they can go to these organizations to serve for our our own heritage. So that can be actually discussed in our classes. So there are ministries of tourism which are taking extra additional interest now by taking some schemes like Adopt the Heritage scheme. You can just go through this through Google, and in this, through the CSR funding by any company can also select or choose some of the tourist places, and they can submit the expression of interest, and they can also contribute for the betterment of these unique sites. It's a scheme called Adopt the Heritage, Apni Dharohar, Apni Pehchan. So you can actually also, if you know some of the corporate sectors, corporate person, you can also request them, you can share this information so that these corporate fund can also be utilized for the betterment of these unique monumental sites. So there is another important scheme that has been taken by the Ministry of Culture of Government of India, that is Adarsh Smarak scheme. So what is the basic objective of this scheme? To make the monument visitor friendly, to upgrade it or provide with washrooms, etc., with audiovisual facilities, to streamline the wastewater and garbage disposal, etc., or to make the monument more accessible for differently abled people, and finally to implement Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, etc. So you see, these are some of the government initiatives that are taken by the government of India as well as state departments. So there are websites, government websites you can go through, like Know India website. Many informations are given. So there is some international fund that can be approached, like World Monuments Fund, for the protection of preservation of these monuments. So what is important for us, even at our home, even at our neighborhood, there may be many more monuments, there may be many more architectural remains, many more structures, many more sculptures. How to take care of it? At least as a common citizen, as a concerned citizen, or as a concerned teacher, you can share this information with your student so that they can also take some interest in it, and then take some specific measures for conserving those properties. At least the initial level, at school level or at college level, we can identify those sites. We can at least work for the interpretation of these sites, bringing out the true history of that site. And if we can take some conservation plan at hand, we can even approach the government as well as some CSR fund and all, or even you can take some schemes like Adopt a Monument, which I'll discuss sometime later. And through this, you can actually contribute for the management and preservation of these monuments. tourism at heritage sites. This is again growing at the important tourist sites. It can contribute for the generation of wealth. Now, one important point that I would like to mention here, that many a times it is seen our young children, without knowing their without knowing or knowingly, they used to scramble on many things on the wall of these monuments. They used to write their names. They used to write something unnecessary things with a pen or some stone or etc. So this has to be prevented. This makes the monument very ugly, and this deteriorates the building itself. So this has to be emphasized among the young mindset of our children. So you can see, through education, through training, our children can be an archaeologist in the future. So for that, there are many universities, many colleges which give training or education in archaeology. You can actually share this information with your students, that there is a postgraduate diploma in archaeology offered by Archaeological Survey of India, which provides further opportunities for employment. So this is a 2-year diploma after their master courses that can be actually approached. Moreover, as you can also suggest your student, many times it is seen that as a teacher, they will be asking you what field to choose, how to go about it. So these are some of the information that you can share, that there are many funding agencies like Indian Council of Social Research, Social Science Research, Indian Council of Historical Research, etc. These can be utilized for receiving some funds for their studying in archaeology. So there are many organizations like Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, and I am also the convener of the INTEC Kamrup chapter, where we recap many projects. Conservation, particularly this applied form of the subject, like how we conserve the buildings, how we preserve the buildings. These are also taught in those courses like diploma or in master courses. Sharing information through publications. So you can go through my book. It is given here. Sharing information, whatever we do, it should be shared with the public. So you can write some books, or you can write some articles, even some newspaper. It is important for us to share. So generating knowledge bank. So in your schools, you should, besides keeping the regular textbook, we should also bring some books related to our culture, heritage, tradition, etc. This will generate much more interest among our children. So as a common man, we are also responsible for deteriorating many of the sculptures by applying vermilion or applying some paint, etc. This has to be stopped, and this has to be told to our children. What we can take up, basically, you see, at school level, we can conduct some quizzes, some essay competition, some painting competition. We can give some assignments to make to our children, so that they can be engaged with the monuments that is nearby your locality. You can provide them some small projects on it. You can also take up some heritage walks. Heritage walk has become a very important initiative for the promotion of heritage. Another important initiative that you can take, you can adopt a monument. As a school, as a class, you can take up or adopt a particular monument to take care of them. The children can be attached to that particular monument. So these are some of the examples of taking children to the monuments. And there are many site museums. Wherever there is an archaeological site of Survey of India or the state departments have established many site museums. Those site museums are also important repositories of knowledge. So you can bring your children to those sites museums. So there are many important events to celebrate for us. Today we are celebrating this World Yoga Day. You can celebrate the World Heritage Day, that's in 8th of April. 18th of May, you have the International Museum Day. 27th of September, you have World Tourism Day. We have the 14th November, you have International Day Against Illicit Trafficking of Cultural Property. Then from 19th to 25th of November, you have World Heritage Week. So these are the days or weeks that you can actually celebrate, and you can particularly inculcate the sense of pride and sense of belongingness through celebrating these particular events through teaching learning process. So whenever you know that there is an excavation going on by some agency, you can bring your children to that particular archaeological site. You can ask them to take part of that particular excavation. You can ask them to see that particular excavation, how they are doing. So this is an important thing that you can actually take up. You can bring them and you can provide them some hands-on activities, how to document a monument, how to document a site. You need to take help from some of the experts in it. You can go to a local a museum or an district archaeology office or Archaeological Survey of India office, etc. So you can or some colleges and universities to bring some experts for helping you in the training on documentation, etc. So this is our one of the groups of students that we have in our department at the Cotton University. We very frequently used to go to the field. Of course, during this corona pandemic, we are not it is not being possible nowadays to move very frequently, but still we used to conduct as and when there is a possibility for conducting field work. So you can bring your children to some of the national museums for their study purpose. This is the Indira Gandhi Rashtriya Manav Sangrahalaya in Bhopal, Indira Gandhi National Museum of Men, which gives you an open air context of the museum where your student can learn about the traditional ethnic communities of India. This is the Udayagiri cave in cave where our students were taken there. This is the famous site of Hathnora in Narmada Valley, where a skull of Homo erectus or archaic form of Homo sapiens, our ancestor, was recovered in 1982 by Arun Sonakia of Geological Survey of India. So this particular bed is famous for the fossils of Pleistocene period. So you can also think of bringing your children to some of the prehistoric sites to give a glimpse of the areas where prehistoric men were occupying. These are some of the temples in Orissa where experts, Dr. Divishar Gannayak of Orissa Circle of Archaeological Survey of India, is explaining about the architectural heritage to the students. Even we can take part, we can take some heritage walk or heritage awareness program in association with some Go UNESCO initiative. That is, you can find it out in Google. There is one initiative by UNESCO which is known as Go UNESCO, where students can conduct this particular heritage walk. They can click some good photographs of the monument and share in the social medias. So this will actually enhance the uniqueness of the local sites. Another one thing I would like to share with you, that recently we had one bicycle ride to different heritage sites. So we called it as Heritage Ride, organized by Cycloventure. So there are many different interest groups. You see, some people will be interested in riding bicycles. Somebody is more interested in motorcycle riding, etc. So this variety of groups of people can be actually engaged through heritage activities. So people in this heritage ride took so much interest in those heritage sites. You can organize some lectures at your schools by experts. inviting, because nowadays it is very online in nature, even national scholars or international speakers can be also contacted, and they can give you some of their experiences about heritage. So you can conduct some training workshop for your children. You have this Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage. Every state has a state chapter. Every district has its district chapter. You can contact this intact office and you can have this training workshops. You can have a heritage club in your school, so that they can take part in heritage related activities. So the children can come and experience the museum that even we have in the universities. So finally, I'd like to mention here two important publications that you can actually procure for your school. That is the Adopt a Monument by Intact, which is a heritage education booklet for how to adopt a particular monument. So the details are given, so that you can procure, and also you can subscribe to this Young Intact newsletter. So that will also give you how children can be engaged in the heritage activities through the teaching learning procedure. So finally, I'd like to mention here, it is better to preserve than to repair, better to repair than to restore, better to restore than to reconstruct. This is a very famous uh, 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 dialogue by this heritage expert called Alexander Didron, who emphasized the importance of preservation, restoration, and reconstruction of our heritage. So anyway, I would like to thank you everyone for your patience hearing, and I would like to request again all of you to all of you to basically to share these informations with your students, so that they can take pride, they can feel their belongingness, they can take a special interest in the legacy of our past, particularly the monumental legacy of the past, which are actually the remains of our architectural skill, technological skill, historical skill, engineering skill, and also the scientific temperament of our past. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Manjil. It was wonderful experiences, sir, to hear you. As sir is qualified in different studies in the field of archaeology, if you see, he is postgraduate in archaeology from Deccan College, that is the prestigious in our country, from Pune. Then he switched over to Switzerland, Bern, and he obtained another post-graduation in quaternary studies that all reflected in his presentations. But today, the lecture was assigned to Sir Manjil Hazarika, was on monuments and scientific temper. He justified totally to all the sections of these monuments. He has taken examples and journey all the way, sir. It was going on in the computer and mobiles, but it was really a live presentation from all part of the country. You have given us presentations and all monuments you have taken as example. Then you have taken us to quaternary studies, even to Hathnora. We have seen the glimpses of Hathnora and outcome of Hathnora. So thank you so much on behalf of this huge team, 250 teacher participants and CCRT. I welcome teachers to have some query to discuss something with our resource person. Teachers, most welcome. You may ask your queries to Sir Manjil Hazarika.
Thank you, sir. I am Gayatri Saikia from Tinsukia, Assam.
बोलिए बोलिए. और नेक्स्ट विश्वजीत सर थे. विश्वजीत सर कुछ बोलना चाह रहे हैं.
Thank you, respected Hazarika sir. Thank you. you have touched a vast architectural and historical aspects of India in a very small time. And thank you, sir. মই অসমীয়াটো ক'ব পাৰো আপোনাক তাকো আপুনি বুজি পাব অসমৰ পৰাই হয়তো আপুনি গতিকে হয় ছাৰ ধন্যবাদ আপোনাৰ ইমান ধুনীয়া স্পীচৰ কাৰণে আৰু গোটেইখিনি চুই গৈছে all aspects of Indian history and Assam history. Sir, apuni, I want to ask you if you kindly upload the PPT slides in the group, then it will be helpful for us.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay.
Yes,
thank you, Hazarika sir. It was same request from the CCRT. If we get your PPT, all teachers they require to have with them. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Actually, this is Prasad from Puducherry.
Yeah.
As of now, the present situation, as sir suggested to have physical tours to any nearby monuments, as of now in this pandemic situation is very difficult. So I request to share some sources of some virtual tours in order to show the students in ICT labs, so that physically they don't have to go there, but they can just see all the monuments and historical places. Rather than just showing the slideshows, it would be better if we show some virtual tour, like as if the practically students are entering in the premises of those historical monuments and seeing the things, so that once they start feeling the importance and with some appropriate voiceover, so in order to make them understanding the importance of those monuments, so that they start respecting those greatness those days when the technology was not available. Such a great monuments have been constructed. They start respecting, and they obviously start protecting. They feel that as if that is their country's property. They'll have great respect for them, and they'll definitely protect also. Being the students of the government schools, most of them, we do practically, even if in the normal situation also, we can't afford any tours or excursions to the these monuments. So that saves a lot of time, money, as well as. And I request the authorities to kindly share some virtual tour links in order to show the students. That's my request. Thank you so much.
Yes. I would like to mention here, because of this pandemic situation, so many of the museums are now going virtual, in the sense, so they are taking some specific time, like every week, one particular day, a particular time they are taking, and then they are showing the entire museum through an online mode. So these kind of messages that I used to get it very frequently. There are many WhatsApp groups in archaeology or in museums and all. So these links are being sent to us, and we usually share these links with our students. They are now participating in the virtual tours of these museums. Along with that, there are many initiatives by the government of India, as you have said, and also the Archaeological Survey of India, to showcase virtually these monuments in a virtual mode. So we have to find it out. If I found out some more details on it, I can definitely share with Dr. Sandeep Sharma ji, and then he can pass on these informations or links to you, all of you. So definitely that I can do in future. I mean, for you.
Thank you.
That's what exactly I'm talking about, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes.
Hello, sir. My name is Vishwajit Bora.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Sir, অসমীয়াতে কৈছো হা।
হয় কওক।
স্যার, এই যেটো আপুনি ধৰক প্ৰাচীন আমাৰ স্মৃতিসৌধসমূহৰ যি সংৰক্ষণৰ কথা ক'লে, হেল্ল',
হয়,
সংৰক্ষণৰ কথা যেটো ক'লে ধৰক, এই ক্ষেত্ৰত আমি মানে ধৰক বিদ্যালয় পৰ্যায়ত ধৰক এটা পাঠ্যপুথিসমূহত কিবা পাঠ সংলগ্ন কৰিব পৰা হয় নেকি? বিদ্যালয় কোনোবা এটা বিষয়ত ধৰক সৰুকে হ'লেও ধৰক সৰুৰ পৰা যদি আমি হয়তো সতৰ্ক কৰি তুলি নিওঁ, তেতিয়াহ'লে হয়তো ভৱিষ্যতে আমি যিবিলাক আমি ৰংঘৰ, কাৰেংঘৰ বা অন্যান্য যিবিলাক আমাৰ স্মৃতিসৌধ বা কিবা কিবি এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ আছে, প্ৰাচীন হেৰি আছে, সেইবিলাকত হয়তো আমি দেখা পাওঁ যে বহুত সময়ত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ কিবাকে লিখা মেলা কৰে কিবা কৰে সেই তেতিয়াৰ পৰা যদি বিদ্যালয় পৰ্যায়ৰ পৰা যদি আমি সেইটো গঢ়ি নিব পাৰো তেতিয়া হয়তো এইটো এনেকুৱা এটা পৰ্যায় নহবগে চাগে
হয় 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 ডেফিনেটলি আপুনি কথাটো ঠিকই কৈছে so basically the participant was asking me how can we incorporate these things in our school syllabus. So you see this new national education policy emphasizes on this particular issue how to conserve the monument or in general how to preserve our heritage. So definitely there is a scope for incorporating these things in our syllabus. Okay, and when we have these days, international days of, let's say, monuments, to museum day, tourism day, tetia ki hoy ami jodi specific, if we can take up some specific kind of approach, like let's say we are having some drawing competition, we can take them to a particular site very nearby, not necessarily you have to go to Delhi or Bombay or anywhere else or Guwahati. Wherever you are, you can take them to a local monument. We can simply walk down there. So you can ask them to draw that particular or paint that particular monument. So this is also kind of an awareness, you see. So this is the way we can do some hands-on activities, and definitely we can also incorporate these things in one of the school syllabuses, because this definitely the NCERT or RCERT, now they will definitely revise their curriculums based on national education policy. So tetia asolote ei kotha khini incorporate korile, definitely it will be a very good thing to inculcate things right from your school children.
Sir,
Yes.
in addition to the same discussion, মই এটা কথা সুধিব বিচাৰিছো, আমি বহুত ক্ষেত্ৰত দেখি পাওঁ যে ষ্টুডেন্ট বিলাকৰ মাজত মানে তেওঁলোকৰ ইন্টাৰেষ্টটো বহুত কমটি বা ভ্যালু দিব নাজানে আৰ্কিঅলজিক্যাল ষ্টাডিৰ প্ৰতি। সেইটো বস্তু সৰুৰ পৰাই from their childhood, how can we increase the interest and to value towards the archaeological study among the children? সেইটো বিষয়ে আপুনি ক'ব নেকি, যাতে ধৰি লওক আমি কেনেকে তেওঁলোকক সৰুৰ পৰাই উৎসাহিত কৰিব পাৰো?
So how to increase the value about heritage or archaeological studies right from the childhood. You see, everyone is now job oriented, everyone is now profit oriented. This is the normal tendency, you see. So jodi apuni at a bright future dekhwabo pare detia hai student jabo, we need to tell our students that there is even a bright future even if you do studies in history, archaeology, art and all. So if we all the time we talk negatively about these subjects, definitely it is not going to happen. So we have to show them the links where they can take up, and then finally they can become a they can get a good job or something like that. So hey, to one point of view. Another point of view ki hobo pare je you have to give them some hands-on training. Okol ami jodi amar syllabus kon, if we simply talk about the dynasties or simply we talk about the rulers and all, so ketiao asolte ei bostu sense of belonging to ketiao nahibo. We should always talk about the local things. Let's say অনবৰতে আমি যদি দিল্লীৰ মনুমেন্টৰ কথা কৈ থাকো, students may not take so much of interest. We have to talk about our local monuments. What is the importance of that monument? We have to talk that how rich this area is, how rich or how important that monument is, how significant that monument is. Tetia asolte slowly আপোনালোকে চাব যে definitely the student will take some interest. আৰু সেই ইন্টাৰেষ্ট সবেইটো নলয়। আপোনাৰ এটা ক্লাছত যদি 50-60 ষ্টুডেন্ট থাকে, not every student will take interest. Some 4-5 students will take interest. You nurture them, definitely they are going to be a bright perspective student for our future of this subject. So সেই কাৰণে আৰু এতিয়া যেহেতু অনলাইনৰ যুগ, এতিয়া কি হৈছে বহুত বিলাক লেকচাৰ, যেবিলাক আজি মই এটা যিটো লেকচাৰ দি আছো তেনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ লেকচাৰ মানে UGCA বা ইভেন NCERT বা ইভেন আদাৰ অৰ্গেনাইজেশ্যন বিলাকে সৰু সৰু ভিডিঅ' ক্লিপ কিছুমান বনাইছে মনুমেন্ট বিলাকৰ ওপৰত, খুব ধুনীয়া কিছুমান ডকুমেন্টাৰী কিছুমান বনাইছে। So we should start advising them to see these things. তেতিয়া আসলতে কি হ'ব ষ্টুডেন্ট বিলাকৰ মাজত এইবিলাকৰ বিষয়ে অলপ আইডিয়া আহিব আৰু আপোনালোকে ডেফিনেটলি স্কুল বিলাকত কিছুমান হেৰিটেজ ক্লাব খুলি দিব পাৰে যিকেইটা ষ্টুডেন্টে অলপ বেছি ইন্টাৰেষ্ট লয় those students who take special interest on heritage sector you can open some heritage club and take up some initiatives and then you can give some awards. So and then if you are interested you can get in touch with me in future so we can also give some training to your school children in future when the situation improves.
Dr. Hazarika,
yes,
I
sir.
want to intervene and to inform the teachers that CCRT is having one scheme there we provide 7,500. Now if you see is not resumed totally because of this corona episode, but that scheme is with us. Later on definitely will continue the program. If
yes,
you apply for the cultural club in your schools, those teachers who attended our CCRT program, they can apply, they can download application from CCRT website and they can open cultural club registered with the CCRT, their club, and annually they can report their activities. So many of the process Dr. Manjil is guiding you, that is there with government system. We have to explore, no sir? Sir
yes,
Manjil.
yes, very true, sir. Very
and
true.
Sir, with your prior permission, whether we can conclude now. Thank you, ma'am, Barnali. And
yes, sir.
Sir Hazarika, itu very well hoya se lecture to well hoya se. And even interaction was very nice.
Thank you.
And dear friends, the interaction was going on little in Assamese also. That is one of the another sweet language after Bengali. ये दो मीठे भाषाएं हैं हमारे ईस्टर्न इंडिया में जिसको आप अभी सुन रहे थे वो भी एक हेरिटेज है हमारे देश का जो हजारिका साहब और हमारे टीचर पार्टिसिपेंट शेयर कर रहे थे. It was thorough intellectual discussion and presentation, Sir Hazarika. As usual, whenever you appear in our CCRT program, we feel privileged that Dr. Hazarika is with us. So nice of you. Thank you being with us.
Thank you.
और मुझे लगता है अगर वहाँ पे सर पुजारी हैं, पुजारी साहब हैं, पुजारी सर आप मुझे सुन सकते हैं क्या?
हेलो. हेलो.
हाँ, प्रदीप पुजारी सर को मैं इनवाइट करने से पहले आई विश टू शेयर अगेन दैट two important things with my participants. And Sir Manjil Hazarika was not there in inaugural session, so I wish to inform him also. The first thing, again we wish you for the International Yoga Day. इंटरनेशनल योगा डे के लिए फिर से CCRT की ओर से सभी टीचर्स को और मंजिल सर को शुभकामनाएं.
थैंक यू.
और मंजिल सर हमने मॉर्निंग में एक इंफॉर्मेशन शेयर किया था हमारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स के साथ. हमारे ऑनरेबल चेयरपर्सन डॉक्टर हेमलता एस मोहन और डायरेक्टर सर श्री ऋषि वशिष्ठ जी के विजन और उनके गाइडेंस की वजह से CCRT ने एक और रीजनल सेंटर इस्टेब्लिश किया. सेंट्रल इंडिया में हमने अपना नाम दर्ज किया सर दमोह में. दमोह डिस्ट्रिक्ट में मध्य भारत में अब हमारे टीचर्स आ पाएंगे. They'll join us all the way from all part of the country in central India in Damoh. और 19 जून को 10 बजे शार्प में हमारे ऑनरेबल यूनियन मिनिस्टर ऑफ कल्चर एंड टूरिज्म श्री प्रहलाद सिंह पटेल जी के कर कमलों से इसका इनॉग्रल सेशन हुआ, जिसका लाइव वीडियो और प्रेजेंटेशन सभी चीजें हमारे वेबसाइट में और हमारे यूट्यूब चैनल में, फेसबुक में सभी जगह मौजूद है. मैं सभी टीचर्स से रिक्वेस्ट भी करता हूं कि उसको कृपया देखें, अपने लाइक्स दें, उससे सीखें. और हम लोग CCRT हमेशा CCRT के लोग आपके साथ में हैं टीचिंग लर्निंग प्रोसेस में. और मैं अब सर पुजारी को इनवाइट करता हूं कि मंजिल साहब का वोट ऑफ थैंक्स करें, सभी टीचर्स का वोट ऑफ थैंक्स करें और हम आज के दिन को, आज के प्रोग्राम को यहाँ समाप्त करें, फॉर्मेलिटीज कंप्लीट करें और कल की तैयारी करें. थैंक यू एवरीवन. थैंक यू अगेन बीइंग विद अस.